All right, so today we're going deep into the life of Alexei Navalny,
Okay.
and we're using his memoir, Patriot. A memoir.
Right.
So you've probably heard of Alexei Navalny.
Oh, yeah,
He's been in the news a lot
definitely.
as this Russian opposition leader. Really been a thorn in Putin's side,
Yeah.
exposing corruption, rallying for change. But
Mhm.
this memoir is about more than just those moments.
Right.
They got him in the headlines. It's really about his journey
Okay.
from growing up in the Soviet system to how he became this, fighter for democracy.
And what's really interesting, I think, is how he uses his story,
Yeah,
his personal story, to paint a picture of Russia as a whole.
right.
I mean, it's like he's holding up a mirror
Yeah,
to this society and saying, look, this is what it's like.
yeah,
These are the issues that we face. This is the
yeah,
legacy of the Soviet Union, all of that.
absolutely. And he starts by taking us back to his childhood.
Okay.
And he grew up in a Soviet army town.
Wow. Yeah,
So very unique upbringing.
definitely.
And it's interesting because it's like this blend of isolation,
Mhm.
being in this military community,
Yeah.
but then also getting these little glimpses of the outside world.
Oh, interesting.
Like through films that they would watch at the officers club.
I see. So it's like this contrast
Yeah.
that maybe sparked his curiosity.
Yeah.
Like, I want to see what else is out there.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
then another thing he points out is that in this town,
Yeah.
everything operated on like codes and numbers,
Oh, wow.
which reflects the Soviet system's obsession with control and secrecy.
Makes sense.
And then, this one just blew my mind.
Okay.
He had access to explosives as a kid.
What?
Yeah.
No way.
I know.
That's wild.
It's kind of funny, but it also kind of speaks to the audacity that he becomes known for later.
Yeah. I mean, you think about that environment.
Right.
And it shapes you.
Yeah.
And then, of course, Chernobyl happens,
Oh, right.
which, so they lived near Obninsk,
Yeah.
which was a major nuclear research center.
Right.
So they saw firsthand the government trying to cover up the truth.
And his mother had this really telling reaction.
What was that?
She said that even the fools in town knew the government was lying,
Wow.
which really highlights the cynicism towards authority that was already there.
Yeah. And you see how these early encounters with these lies, with this hypocrisy,
Yeah.
it really plays a role in Navalny's political awakening.
Right.
He talks about Gorbachev's perestroika as, this moment of hope, but ultimately disillusionment,
Yeah.
because he saw the same patterns of, lying and deception continuing under Putin.
Right.
And that just solidified his distrust in the system.
Absolutely. And the war in Afghanistan was another turning point.
Okay.
He saw the impact on soldiers and families.
Right.
The contrast between the propaganda glorifying the war
Yeah.
and then the reality on the ground.
And it's here where we see him, really valuing transparency
Yes.
and truth-telling.
Yeah.
He sees these lies and hidden agendas.
Yeah.
And it just fuels this passion to expose the truth.
Absolutely. Now, one thing I found interesting is that he doesn't shy away from his own imperfections in the book.
Oh, that's good.
Like, he talks about things he did in university that were kind of morally questionable.
Interesting. What kinds of things?
Like, he would resort to bribes to pass exams.
Wow.
I know.
That's pretty surprising.
Yeah, but it also gives us more context,
Yeah.
like how ingrained corruption was. It wasn't just at the top level.
It was everywhere.
Exactly. So you have this young man who's seen the cracks in the system, experienced corruption firsthand,
Yeah.
and he starts to feel this pull to make a difference.
Okay.
So he joins Yabloko, which is one of the oldest liberal political parties in Russia,
I see.
thinking he could work within the system,
Okay.
but he quickly becomes disillusioned.
Why?
He found them too focused on their leader and not really effective in challenging the status quo.
So what did he do?
That's when he discovers the power of the internet. He realized that to fight corruption, you have to go around traditional media
Yeah.
because that was heavily controlled by the government.
Right.
So he sets out to create Russia's largest uncensored news outlet.
Ambitious.
Yeah, and his strategy is really smart.
Okay. I'm intrigued. What is it?
He starts buying shares in corrupt state-owned companies.
Wait, so he becomes an investor to fight corruption?
Yeah,
That's brilliant.
right.
How does that work?
So by owning shares, he gets legal standing to demand information
Oh, I see.
and expose the shady dealings that are going on.
That's really clever.
Yeah, and a great example of this is his investigation into Transneft,
Okay.
which is the world's largest pipeline company.
Wow.
And he uncovered massive embezzlement happening at the highest levels.
So this wasn't just a small scandal.
No, it was huge, and it showed how much influence Navalny could have.
And I bet that put him right on the Kremlin's radar.
So yeah, they realized he wasn't just some blogger.
Right.
He was a serious threat to their power.
So he goes from this lawyer and blogger to this anti-corruption crusader.
Exactly. He's organizing protests, getting arrested, building a network of supporters.
So this is where things get really interesting.
Yeah, and the memoir gives us a look at the personal cost of all of this.
Yeah.
He talks about his time working as an advisor to the governor of the Kirov region,
Okay.
and this is when he tries to tackle corruption from within the system.
So did it work?
Not really. He quickly learned the limitations of that approach.
And then there's the Kirovless case.
Right, where he's accused of embezzlement.
It felt like they were trying to silence him.
Yeah, it was like they were trying to make him the target to discredit him.
Absolutely. It was a
Yeah.
blatant attempt to ruin his reputation and stop his political career.
But instead of backing down,
Yeah.
he used the trial as a platform to expose the charges and the flawed judicial system.
So he turned it into an opportunity to further his cause.
Exactly. It takes a lot of guts to do that.
It really does. And that unwavering spirit, that refusal to be intimidated, that's what sets him apart.
Absolutely.
He knew that turning this adversity into a chance to shine a light on the injustices,
Yeah.
that was powerful.
So we see how those early experiences with hypocrisy and corruption led him to become this fearless activist.
And that's just the beginning.
Right.
There's so much more to his story.
Well, absolutely.
And as we go deeper into this memoir,
Yeah.
we'll see how his tactics evolve,
Right.
how the Kremlin tries even harder to silence him,
Yeah.
and the hope that fuels his fight for a better Russia.
Exactly.
And that fight leads him to something even bigger.
Yeah.
He decides to run for president in 2018.
Wow.
Now keep in mind, he was technically barred from running.
Right. Because of that Kirovless case.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But Navalny being Navalny,
Mm.
he launches this nationwide campaign anyway.
I bet the Kremlin was freaking out.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
They tried so hard to discredit him and imprison him.
Yeah.
And here he is gaining all this support, holding rallies, making them look weak.
So what did his campaign look like?
Well, he knew he couldn't actually win. But he turned the election into this referendum on Putin.
Smart.
He made it about the people's dissatisfaction.
Right.
He opened campaign offices across the country, mobilized volunteers, used social media to talk to voters.
Wow.
He even held these creative campaign events.
Like what?
He would give speeches from rooftops.
What?
Yeah, to avoid getting shut down by the authorities.
That's amazing.
It's like this performance, this way to expose how absurd the whole thing was
Right.
and get his supporters fired up.
And did it work?
It did. He brought together all sorts of people, students, pensioners, people who had supported Putin before,
Wow.
but they were all united by this desire for change.
So it was a real movement.
Yeah, it showed that there were a lot of people who wanted a more democratic and just society.
And he wasn't just holding rallies and giving speeches.
Right. He was releasing these documentaries on YouTube
Oh, yeah.
that really went after the corrupt elite.
I remember those.
He exposed their lavish lifestyles
Yeah.
and showed how they were getting away with all this corruption.
And then there was that investigation that everyone was talking about.
Oh, you mean the one into Dmitry Medvedev?
Yeah, the former president and prime minister.
The one of the ducks.
Yeah, that's the one.
It was called He Doesn't Dmitry.
That's so good.
I know, right?
So what was that investigation all about?
Well, Navalny detailed Medvedev's alleged secret fortune.
Okay.
His estates, vineyards, yachts.
Wow.
And he didn't just accuse him, he showed all the evidence.
So he connected the dots.
Exactly. He showed the shell companies, the shady business deals, the money trail.
And that documentary really made people angry, didn't it?
Oh, yeah, people were fed up.
Yeah.
They're tired of the corruption, the inequality,
Right.
and they were inspired by Navalny's bravery.
Yeah, he wasn't afraid to say what everyone was thinking.
And it backfired on the Kremlin.
How so?
They tried to make him seem like this unimportant figure,
Yeah.
but it didn't work. He had exposed how unhappy people were.
It's like he had his finger on the pulse of the nation.
Exactly, and they couldn't ignore it anymore.
But of course, all of this came at a price.
Right, the harassment, the arrests, the attacks, they all got worse.
It seems like that's always the pattern.
Yeah, the more attention he got, the more they tried to silence him.
And what about the poisoning attempt?
That was terrifying.
They used Novichok, a military-grade nerve agent.
It was a clear message, don't mess with us.
And he barely survived.
I know, it's scary to think about.
And yet, after he recovered in Germany, he decided to go back to Russia.
That was incredibly brave.
He knew what he was walking into.
He did, but he wouldn't let fear control him.
It's like he wanted to expose the regime for what it was.
Exactly. He knew the world would be watching.
And so he was arrested as soon as he got back.
Yeah, and sentenced to prison on these fake charges.
It's unbelievable.
And the conditions he's been kept in are awful.
What kinds of things?
Solitary confinement, sleep deprivation, psychological torture.
It's like they're trying to break him.
They are. They want to make an example out of him.
But even in prison, he finds ways to resist.
I know, it's incredible.
He talks about the support he got from other prisoners.
Really?
Yeah, these little acts of kindness.
That's amazing.
It helped him deal with the isolation and despair.
It really is something else. And it's not just, his personal story.
Right.
It's this powerful look at what's wrong with Putin's regime.
Yeah.
It shows us the power of truth and how important it is to fight for what you believe in.
No matter what.
Exactly. And he's honest about everything.
Yeah.
Like, he describes the psychological pressure they put on him.
Right.
The surveillance, the attempts to isolate him.
Yeah, it's all there.
But then he also talks about these moments of humanity.
Like what?
But there's this one story about a prisoner who gives him this little icon.
Wow.
I know it shows that even in this dark place, you can still find connection.
Yeah.
And it says something about Navalny that he can find hope in those moments.
And it's not just that he finds humor in it all, too.
I know, right?
Like the rules, the way they try to control him.
Yeah, it's like he's refusing to let them take away his joy.
It's pretty amazing.
It is. He could have given up,
Yeah.
but he chooses to fight back, even in small ways.
Like how
He writes, he exercises, he talks to the other prisoners.
it's really inspiring.
It shows how strong the human spirit can be.
And it makes you think, what would you do in that situation?
Right. Would you have that same strength?
It's humbling to think about.
It is. We often take our freedom for granted,
Yeah.
but his story reminds us that freedom is fragile.
We have to protect it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And his fight for a democratic Russia, that's a fight for all of us.
Yeah.
Everyone who believes in freedom, justice, accountability.
And his fight is still going on, even though he's in prison.
Right. He knows his voice can still reach people,
Yeah.
that his story can inspire others to stand up for what they believe in.
And that's why he wrote this memoir.
Exactly. It's his legacy.
It's a way to make sure his message lives on.
And it's a call to action.
What do you mean?
He's not asking for pity.
Really?
He wants us to do something.
To fight for what we believe in.
Yeah, even when it seems impossible.
He reminds us that change takes time.
It does. And it
Yeah.
takes courage and persistence,
And speaking truth to power.
even when it's dangerous.
And it starts with small acts of defiance.
Absolutely, like speaking out against injustice,
Supporting those who are being silenced.
holding our leaders accountable.
We all have a part to play.
We do, in building a better world.
And even small acts of courage can make a difference.
They can inspire others to take a stand.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive into Alexei Navalny's life,
Yeah.
I want to leave you with this question.
Okay.
What will you do to make a difference?
What's your act of defiance going to be?
Because this isn't just about one man's fight for freedom.
It's about all of us.
Realizing that we have the power to create a better future.
One step at a time.
And that's it for today's deep dive. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for listening.
We explored the incredible life and legacy of Alexei Navalny.
A powerful story.
It reminds us that even when things seem hopeless, hope can win.